So, should you pursue a relationship with an avoidant ex-partner, or should you just cut ties and walk away? Hi, I'm Amy, and welcome to my channel. I'm a certified relationship coach and a manifesting teacher, and this channel's about merging spirituality and psychology so you can manifest your dream relationships. And in today's video, I get asked this question such a lot. My ex-partner is avoidant. Is it worth hanging on to this? And a lot of my clients are anxious attached, and a lot of them have specific people or ex-partners that are avoidant attachment. And I was here as well. And if you're familiar with this channel, you know, I've done lots and lots of videos on what my journey was as somebody who is formerly anxiously attached with an avoidant ex-partner. Now, whichever choice you choose, whether you choose to pursue this or whether you choose to move on, is absolutely your decision, and there is never any judgment on this channel for your decisions. But what I want to do is I wanted to create this video so that you had a really good idea of where your ex-partner is now mentally. And I will be doing a video this week. I'm going to interview my person who is healing avoidant, so that you can see whether you're in no contact or whether there's just been an argument or whether it's a temporary breakup or whatever the situation is that's not going right, so that you can see from an avoidance point of view where they are at. Now, I'm not saying this so that you can leverage this information on somebody, but what the point is so that you can understand a lot better where they're coming from, so that you can actually start to meet them in the middle. Because when you've got two opposing attachment styles, when you've got anxious attachment that's craving, that's trying to cling, that's acting needy and desperate, you have the avoidant partner who absolutely cannot deal with that behavior. Now, many of my clients, there's never been a healthy conversation where you've just parted ways amicably. It's always been after conflict or someone's feelings have been hurt, and the relationship tends to abruptly end. Now, this is typical of avoidant partners, and the reason why is because having a vulnerable conversation about what they're feeling or what their needs are isn't really possible, because they see vulnerability as weakness. Whereas you've got the anxious attached partner who loves vulnerability. They wear their hearts on their sleeves. There is no sort of guardedness like there is with a dismissive avoidant, which is partially why these two attachment styles get together, because they have opposing attributes that both parties find attractive in the other person. And what I mean by that is that the anxious attachment style will find that the avoidance ability to set boundaries, for example, is really attractive. And the avoidant partner might find that the anxious attachment style's ability to be vulnerable and open is really attractive, because they are traits that neither of them have. So what happens to avoidance after the breakup? From my experience, and also the experience of my clients, we know that the anxious attachment style leans into a breakup. So the anxious attached partner will likely feel feelings of grief, sadness, frustration, and they will generally feel unhappy, and they will lean into their feelings. But in the meantime, you've got the avoidant partner who is doing their best to numb. And that is what their coping strategies are. You might see an avoidant partner get into creature comforts like gaming, for example. They might excessively binge watch. They might eat more. They might numb by drinking. And this is all to avoid their feelings, just so that you have some reassurance, because avoidance will come across like this breakup has not had any effect on them. And when you're on the receiving end of that, that can be really painful. So the avoidant attachment will numb. They will try and stuff their feelings down, because they are not great at tapping into what they're actually feeling. They're not great at processing emotions. You know, and if you've texted an ex-partner and you've got quite a cold response, This is why, because they are less likely to get into a vulnerable conversation with you because they see vulnerability as weakness. However, this numbing of emotions cannot last forever. And at a certain point, particularly if you've been in a long-term relationship with an avoidant partner, at some point, they are going to start feeling their feelings. And this is the cycle that they go through. So let's say, for example, when an avoidant gets into a relationship, they are in a state where it is feelings minus fears. So they get into the relationship, it's the honeymoon period, the feelings are all good, nobody's masks slip, there is very little conflict, but then the fears start to creep up. And eventually the fears will take over, which ends in an abrupt ending of a relationship. And when the relationship breaks up, they feel this temporary feeling of relief, this temporary feeling of freedom, which is high on the avoidance totem pole. What they need is freedom and autonomy. And when they break up in a relationship, when the relationship ends, they are getting these needs met. So for a temporary period of time, they actually do feel relief. Now, don't let this discourage you, because this is just a cycle of what happens. And this is absolutely what happened with my partner when we had split up. So he would go through a period of weeks and weeks and weeks feeling okay, but then inevitably what would happen is that the feelings would start to creep up again, which would then trigger him into contacting me. We'd get back together, and then feelings were there again, but then the fears crept up, and then we'd go through the whole cycle again. So how long does this cycle last? Well, there is plenty of information out there, and I would definitely agree that it's anywhere between 6 weeks and 3 months. Within the first 6 weeks of a breakup, I wouldn't recommend contacting an avoidant partner, because you are not going to get the answer that you want to get. They are still reveling in relief, and there isn't really anything that they will sacrifice that for. So within the first 6 weeks at least, there needs to be a no contact period for both of you. And if you're anxiously attached, I know that the idea of no contact is terrifying, but trust me, you will be able to do this. You are strong enough to do this. And use this time wisely. Use this time to focus solely on yourself and healing yourself. Use this time to identify where your dysfunctional patterns are. Were you too needy? Why? Were you acting desperate? Have you begged them to stay? And really think about, okay, why do I do this? Why do I think that this is the only person that can meet my needs? And really, really give yourself the attention that you're seeking. Give yourself the attention that you're craving, and you will handle no contact a lot better. And I recently did a video on it's like a survival guide on how to actually handle no contact. So when the 6 weeks are up, then what? So what happened with me is, one of two things happened. Either he contacted me or I contacted him. But I can tell you that consistently we got back together. Remember, if you are contacted by an avoidant partner, it is very, very unlikely that it is going to be this big thing of how much they love you and how much they miss you. It probably won't be, because they will want to test the water first. So it's likely that you'll get a message with, "Hi, how are you?" And sometimes the anxious attachment will think, oh, well, that's not good enough. They're not the version that I want them to be. When all they're really doing is testing the water. What they don't want is a heavy conversation about feelings. They don't want to hash out this early on. And I'm not saying don't do it ever, but when you have just started to get into contact with an avoidant ex-partner, you want to keep it light. You want to keep it easy, because they are so much slower to warm up to things. And when they are just testing the water, it doesn't take a lot for them to back off again. So what I used to do is, if he contacted me, I would do exactly that. I would keep it light, I would keep it easy, and very, very surface level. I didn't get into feelings at this stage. I didn't get into why we broke up. I didn't get into, you need to apologize for this, this, and this. I did do that, but not at the beginning. And again, if you decide that you want to get into touch with that person, again, keep it light. Ask how they are. And there is a time and a place to have the conversations that are necessary for you both to move forward. Now, in my experience, in order to maintain a long-term relationship with an avoidant partner, they have got to be on board with acknowledging their own fears and traumas and how that has contributed to the breakdown of the relationship, and having discussions around boundaries, having discussions around needs. There is absolutely a time and place for that, and you deserve to have the relationship that you want so that you can both move more into secure people and have this relationship that you both really do want. So a couple of things that I learned from these painful cycles is, number one, that a relationship with an avoidant absolutely can be saved. However, they do need to want to contribute to the relationship. Avoidant partners can typically be quite self-focused and have kind of like a belief system or an attitude where I have my needs, you have yours, they're separate, and neither of us are responsible for each other's needs or feelings. Now, that isn't exactly conducive to a healthy relationship where there's interdependence. So for me, if it is that you're going back into a relationship with an avoidant partner, these conversations need to happen and they need to be on board. And I'm not saying that they have to change overnight, because again, that is unlikely. They're probably not going to change overnight. But what you do want to see is the needle moving. So let's say you've expressed a need for, to see each other more. And say if they're happy with once a week, you want 4 times a week, maybe you can settle on twice a week in a phone call. And do they show up for that? So there needs to be compromise that's happening. And I think anybody who has an avoidant ex-partner will tell you that it's going to be hard. And, for me, yeah, it was hard, especially when I didn't know what I was doing. It was really hard. However, I was lucky enough to have a partner that was on board. I was lucky enough to have a partner that actually saw and took accountability for his own behaviour and how it was affecting the relationship, and committed to changing that so that we could have a healthy relationship. And the second thing I learned was give them space. They need their space. And if you haven't heard anything within a month, don't panic. They're just doing their thing. They're just trying to numb their own feelings, because that is the coping mechanism that they've learnt from past trauma. And that is something that they've coped with because they've always felt this low level anxiety of maybe not being good enough. So I hope this video helps you at least come to a decision if you're at that crossroads where you don't know whether to carry on or you don't know whether to just cut ties. And I've certainly been there where I've thought, no, I've absolutely had enough of this, and I'm going to let him go. So I'm hoping from this video it's given you a little bit of insight of how to move forward with your relationship. But again, if you have any questions at all, pop them down below. I will do my best to answer them, and I will see you in the next video.